Have you ever felt lonely? I mean, really lonely? It's a feeling we all know. But what if I told you that loneliness isn't just a fleeting emotion? What if it's actually a powerful biological state, one that can physically reshape our brains and has massive consequences for our health? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore. Let's take a look at what's really happening inside the lonely brain.
Okay, so first things first, we've got to get our terms straight. Loneliness and social isolation, they are not the same thing. Not at all. Social isolation is objective, right? It's something you can measure. How many people do you actually see or talk to? But loneliness? Ugh, that's totally subjective. It's that painful gap between the social connections you want and the ones you actually have. It's why you can be in a packed stadium and feel completely, utterly alone, or have just one or two really deep friendships and feel totally connected.
And this feeling, it is incredibly common. Get this. Even before the pandemic, a staggering 22% of adults in the US said they always or often feel lonely. So let's be clear, this isn't some fringe issue affecting a few people. It's a major public health concern hiding in plain sight. So in this explainer, here's our game plan. We're going to start by really understanding what loneliness is. Then we'll look at how it turns into a chronic stress state for the body. After that, we'll take a tour of the brain itself to see the changes. We'll also unpack the vicious cycle that keeps people stuck, and, most importantly, we'll discover how we can break free. All right, let's dive into the basics. What exactly is this feeling we call loneliness? Well, it turns out it's not some kind of personal failing or a flaw in your character. It's actually a deeply ingrained evolutionary signal. This quote just reframes the whole thing so powerfully. I mean, think about it. Loneliness is like hunger or thirst. It's your body's alarm system screaming at you that a fundamental biological need, social connection, isn't being met. For our ancient ancestors, being part of a group meant survival. Being cast out meant almost certain death. That ancient primal warning system is still very, very active inside all of us today.
But what happens when that alarm bell just never turns off, when it's ringing day in and day out? Well, that acute signal becomes a chronic stress state, and that's when it starts taking a really serious toll on our physical health.
The key concept here, the scientific term for this, is allostatic load. It's basically the cumulative wear and tear on your body that happens when you're in a constant state of high alert. Chronic loneliness acts as this persistent psychological stressor that just keeps your stress systems firing on all cylinders, dramatically increasing that wear and tear. And the consequences of this constant stress are, well, they're severe. Research has linked chronic loneliness to this whole cascade of physical problems. We're talking about a weakened immune system, high blood pressure, and a much higher risk of heart disease and stroke. It even messes with your sleep and is a major risk factor for cognitive decline and dementia later in life. And just to put this into perspective, make no mistake. The health risk from being chronically lonely is not trivial. It is on par with well-known dangers like obesity or smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's a powerful, powerful reminder that our social health and our physical health are completely intertwined.
So we know what happens, but what about the how? How does this all work? To really understand that, we need to go inside the brain and see the specific neurological changes that loneliness actually causes.
And what's amazing is that scientists have mapped the key areas that are affected. We see these significant changes in the amygdala, which is our emotional processing center, the hippocampus, which is vital for memory, and the prefrontal cortex, which is kind of like the CEO of the brain handling self-regulation and decision-making. Loneliness literally reshapes the physical architecture of our social brain. And these structural changes, they have real-world consequences for how our brain actually works. The brain on loneliness literally starts to operate differently. It begins to develop these negative cognitive biases, making you expect rejection before it even happens. It messes with your memory, changes how you experience pleasure and rewards, and can even alter how you process basic sensory information from the world around you.
Let's get even more specific. The default mode network, which is active when we're just kind of daydreaming or thinking about ourselves, goes into overdrive. This might be what fuels that endless cycle of rumination and negative self-talk. Meanwhile, the amygdala, our brain's threat detector, becomes hypervigilant, seeing potential social threats absolutely everywhere. And most shockingly of all, the hippocampus. It can actually shrink, leading to real, measurable problems with memory. And it's not just the wiring. The whole chemical landscape of the brain changes too. Cortisol, the classic stress hormone, stays chronically jacked up. Oxytocin, the so-called bonding hormone, takes a nosedive. And levels of mood-regulating chemicals like dopamine and serotonin also drop. So in short, the The brain becomes chemically wired for stress and chemically starved of connection and reward. So this brings us to a huge central paradox. If loneliness is a biological signal that's supposed to tell us to connect with people, why does it so often push people further into isolation? Well, this is what's known as the vicious cycle.
Here's how this brutal loop works. It all starts with that feeling of loneliness. Then, because of all those brain changes we just talked about, like that hyper-reactive amygdala, you start to develop negative social biases. You just start expecting the worst from people. This, of course, causes you to see normal social situations as threatening, which naturally makes you want to withdraw to protect yourself. But that withdrawal only reinforces and deepens the original feeling of loneliness, and the cycle starts all over again, only this time it's even stronger.
It's also really important to zoom out and think about the wider cultural context here. Individualistic cultures, which often praise personal achievement and can frame vulnerability as a weakness, can accidentally create an environment where loneliness just thrives. On the flip side, you have more collectivist cultures, which tend to prioritize the group's needs and cooperation. They build social support right into the fabric of daily life, and that can act as a powerful buffer against isolation.
And this brings up such a critical point about a lot of modern solutions. As the psychologist Shannon Sauer-Zavala puts it, you can't fix a lifestyle of burnout with a scented candle, right? The modern wellness industry so often sells us self-care as this individual consumerist task. But what the science is telling us is that we don't need more isolation as self-care. What we truly need is genuine human connection.
Okay, I know this has been pretty heavy stuff, but here's the most important part of this whole story. This does not have to be a life sentence. The brain that was wired for loneliness can absolutely be rewired for connection. So the big question is, how do we actually do it?
The single most crucial takeaway here is this: loneliness is a modifiable risk factor. Your brain has this incredible capacity for change, a quality we call neuroplasticity. The very same brain that was rewired by isolation can be rewired again by connection. Change is possible.
And the really good news is we have a whole toolbox of proven interventions. Things like psychological therapies, especially cognitive behavioral therapy, are incredibly effective at targeting and changing those negative thought patterns we talked about. Mindfulness training has been shown to reduce not just the feeling of loneliness, but even the physical inflammation that comes with it. And maybe the simplest of all, joining group activities built around a share of interest, sports, hobbies, community service, you name it, is a powerful, powerful way to rebuild those social bonds.
But there is a vital catch here. While technology can definitely help bridge gaps, brain imaging studies confirm that digital communication is not a one-to-one substitute for the real thing. There is something special about face-to-face interaction, with all its nonverbal cues, its shared energy, its physical presence, that uniquely activates the empathy networks in our brain and triggers the release of that crucial bonding hormone, oxytocin.
So at the end of the day, loneliness is a primal signal, one that physically reshapes our brain for the worse. But connection is just as powerful, and it can reshape our brain for the better. This leaves us with one final and maybe the most crucial question of all. What one real face-to-face connection can you build or maybe just strengthen today?